Good morning. It is Wednesday, February the 20th, 2024. We will begin the South Grandma Water and Sewer Authority Finance Committee meeting. I'll turn it over to our director, Mr. Schroyer.
Well, good morning, and thank you for your time this morning to talk about an important item and meet this morning to talk about our FY 24-25 proposed budget. We'd like to start off with staff introductions just for the record this morning. So for the record, I am Scott Schroyer, Executive Director for SCWASA.
Richard Ballman, Finance Director for SCWASA.
Ruben Carden, Assistant Finance Director for SCWASA.
Thank you. And we also have our board secretary in attendance this morning, Crystal, and in the audience, a human resource manager, Priscilla Adcock, to help us out when we get to some of the personnel and position reviews later this morning. So thank you. So first of all, I'd like to start off by thanking the entire SCWASA team in preparation of the fiscal year 24-25 draft budget. The budget work for this upcoming year begins in early fall of each year. In fact, it seems like it's a never-ending process as we prepare for the upcoming fiscal year. Looking ahead, I'd just like to cover our budget calendar just so that the board is aware of what's in front of us for our fiscal year 24-25 budget. We have another Finance Committee meeting scheduled for March 21st. That will be from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. And our goal is to have the required draft budget public hearing at the April 9th board meeting. And we'll have opportunities to approve the budget at the regular board meetings in both May and June, just noting that we need to have an approved budget in place by June 30th. When you look at today's agenda, you will see that we have quite a lengthy agenda with lots of topics to cover. I would feel free to, of course, board chair, add any additional topics that you would like in today's agenda, possibly under other topics if you feel that that's appropriate. Also, due to the length of today's meeting and agenda, please feel free to introduce a recess or two when you feel it is necessary for everyone, okay? Just a note as well, your agenda is full of information. Some of the documents in there are a little bit challenging to read as far as some of the charts and the graphs. And we've taken the opportunity to provide additional larger copies for the board members, the Finance Committee members this morning. They're in a loose packet. So when it comes to that item, when we have discussion, just know that you have those larger copies at your desktop as well. All right, so we have our next item is the FY 23-24 budget review. This is the budget message and budget ordinance. I'm going to ask the finance director just to cover. Would you like to cover the budget message and budget ordinance for 23-24? And we do this as a way just to capture where we are in our current fiscal year, what our budget looked like moving forward. So would you like to cover that for us? Sure. Thank you.
So this is just a reminder of the current year budget, 23-24 budget. We always bring it to the committee to have some reference point if we go into those budgets for the next year. As you recall, last year or the current year, we implemented a new rate structure that was approved by the board on September 13th, 2022. Those rates went into effect July the 1st, 2023. At that time, the water revenue projections were increased by 8%. Sewer revenue was increased by 8%. And of course, capital revenue was funded at 90%. I won't cover all the things that were in the current year budget. Just a quick highlight. There were no positions added. There was a wage adjustment of 5%, the normal merit 3%, which was a range of 0 to 4. There was an increase in the local government retirement system contributions by 0.75%. And we had significant increases to medical and dental premiums of 10%. And the board, the Finance Committee, and thus the board in the budget approved matching 401k at 2%, which was previously 1%. We all know that there have been significant increases in supply costs, fuel costs, chemical costs, as supply chain problems still linger after COVID. And we all know about some of the inflationary factors that are affecting our budget. There were a few projects in the current year budget, such as removal of some hazardous chemicals from the water plant and some large utility repairs that are significant in the current year budget. Again, we were budgeting for $2.3 million of depreciation expense, but only funded 90% of that through rates. And then we had some water tower maintenance. And then you can see in your packet, the 23-24 current year budget ordinance as originally passed. Basically, the revenues were $15,289,655, and the correlated expenses were the same. So we had a balanced budget with no fund balance use.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the Finance Committee regarding what Richard just covered?
None for me.
Very good. I'd like to move on to item 4, which is the fiscal year 24-25 budget review topics. The topics we will have in this section include the budget message and budget ordinance, looking at budget assumptions and fixed costs. We'll look at a rate review and a review of services and fees. So first item up is the proposed fiscal year 24-25 budget message and budget ordinance. And I hope the Finance Committee appreciates the time and the effort put into the budget message this year. It's a little bit longer than previous years, but I wanted to point out many things in this year's budget and some of the key items in terms of revenue and expenses, and also just some of the key programs in the proposed budget. So if you will, I'd like to just highlight some of the sections in here. So looking at our proposed fiscal year 2025 budget summary, the budget is balanced, provides sufficient funds to meet the debt obligations of the organization, and provides for the annual operations of the utility system. Proposed budget does not use fund balance to offset the increased operating costs associated to the proposed budget. This is very similar to last year, and this has been the guidance by the board of directors to not rely on fund balance to balance our budget in terms of expenses. To meet the debt obligations and the increased operational costs of the organization, the proposed FY 24-25 budget includes a rate increase applied to all base rates and volume rates. And just as a reminder, and Richard touched on this briefly, on July 1st, 2023, basically the start of our current fiscal year, Sequasa implemented a new rate model. Prior to implementation of the new rate model, Sequasa increased rates on July 1st, 2021, which was the beginning of fiscal year 21-22. The proposed rate increase is necessary to offset the inflation-based operating costs Sequasa has experienced during the past few fiscal years. During the past few fiscal years, Sequasa managed to absorb the costs associated to inflation due to a variety of factors. One major contributing factor to absorbing the inflationary costs included using the available fund balance from vacant jobs. An example of that are the 2 professional engineers positions that were funded but were not staffed. To lessen operational costs in the fiscal year 24-25 budget, Sequasa will only fund one of the 2 vacant engineering positions, and I'll give additional consideration to funding the second engineer position during the FY 25-26 budget process. So we're doing our part, if you will, to balance as best we can the operational needs of the organization. And you know that we highly depend on the engineers on staff as well as a lot of our consulting engineers to help us through. But again, just taking a look at the inflationary facts that are the inflationary costs to our budget, we're looking to see where we can trim as well, just to balance that. So we thought that was a good idea just to hold on that. However, with respect to staffing, the proposed budget includes a request for 3 new entry-level utility operators. The 3 entry-level utility operator positions include 1 operator to be added to each of Sequasa's 3 utility operational areas, which include the wastewater facility, the water facility, and utility maintenance. Water and wastewater facilities will add the 1 position to their second shift operation, while the utility maintenance area will use this 1 position to focus on fire hydrant maintenance, flushing valve exercising, and so on. So the reason for the request this year is that we've talked about requests for additional staffing for the last few fiscal years. We've had great discussion about this in terms of what type of plan does Sequasa have? When is Sequasa going to actually add the needed staff, and what is the plan for that? We've taken a look at additional staffing since fiscal year 21 and 22. We looked at additional resources needed across the operational areas, and we're coming up with about 9 additional resources that we need across the organization. Of course, we're looking at how to fund those additional resources over the years. And we thought we're at a good point here to at least offer and ask for in our budget here the funding of these 3 additional resources, especially with respect to the second shift operations that we have. And that's been a priority concern for a couple of years here to increase our staffing on our second and third shifts that we have. Of course, the operations run 24/7 to supply water and wastewater to our community. So to date, none of the 9 positions requested had been funded or approved, although the additional utility operators were needed. WAS's revenues have not been sufficient to fund the needed resources. Within the next 10 years, this trend may change when additional revenues are realized from residential commercial growth, potentially following the completion of the I-85 sanitary sewer system improvement project. Let's talk about some of the key revenue elements in the proposed budget. A rate increase to meet anticipated increases to operating expenses. The rate increase projects water revenue to increase by $550,000 compared to fiscal year 23-24. The rate increase projects sewer revenue to increase by $400,000 compared to FY 23-24. The proposed rate increase projects capital revenue at $2.4 million to fund utility infrastructure asset depreciation at 90%. And Sequoia's rate and fee schedule is being reviewed, expanded, and updated as necessary to reflect actual costs of providing services. Further discussion on this topic will occur at the upcoming Finance Committee meeting in March. Of note, regarding our Sequoia rate and fee schedule, staff is evaluating the implementation of a monthly technology fee to offset the costs associated with the individual online bill payment functions. The goal is to leverage the features that are available with the new utility software to encourage more online self-serve payments, thus reducing costs associated with staffing the Welcome Center. Later on in our agenda, in our meeting today, we do have an opportunity, I believe, to talk about that in item 6, other topics. So we'll be discussing that further. Key payroll and benefit expense elements in the proposed budget. A request to add 3 new positions, 1 water treatment plant operator, 1 wastewater treatment plant operator, and 1 utility maintenance mechanic. We are proposing and including a 3% wage schedule adjustment, a 4% performance merit increase for employees, and this is based on merit pay up to 4% as related to annual review performance standards. A North Carolina state requirement increase of 0.75% for local government employees' retirement system. Projected increases of 15% to medical premiums and a 5% to dental and vision premiums. A 2% 401k program, Sequoia matching contribution, and a medical insurance out-of-pocket cap of $500 per month per employee for out-of-pocket costs. Key expenses and capital outlay in the proposed budget, sizable increases in supply costs, fuel costs, and chemical costs due to inflationary factors. Electricity costs due to provider rate increases. Professional services for general legal and engineering services. Project % increase in property and liability insurance premiums. And we are replacing or purchasing operating equipment totaling just under $200,000. And just to note that this budget includes $2.4 million for depreciation expense funded at 90%. Lastly, we'll talk about some of the key programs in the proposed budget. A continued focus on mitigating the PFAS problems with the drinking water. Forming the needed chemical water analysis bench testing to determine which PFAS removal techniques will be used for the water treatment plant upgrade project. Continued focus on the I-85 sanitary sewer system improvement project. The goal this fiscal year is to get this project under construction. Continued focus on the lead and copper service line identification plan and removal process. Continued upgrades across the service area with respect to capital improvement projects at our wastewater treatment facility improvements, water treatment facility improvements, and distribution system improvements. Implementation of new financial software. The new financial software will provide enhancements to customers and to business operations of staff at Sequoia. And a new project entering an agreement with Spectrum to provide high-speed internet connectivity via fiber optic lines to all Saguasa facilities. Enhanced service will provide a virtual private network between facilities, greater file sharing and business continuity, and a faster network for business applications. This technology upgrade, along with the new financial software, will allow Saguasa to operate in a truly modern business environment. That's the end of my message. I'd be happy to discuss any and all portions of this outline with the Finance Committee. So I will ask the committee if there's any questions that you have, anything that you'd like to discuss further regarding any of the sections outlined in the budget message.
One question I do have, I guess it's not really a question, it's information that I brought to me regarding the PFAS issue at a mayor's meeting in Greensboro a couple of weeks ago.
Sure.
It was brought up that a company in Burlington has gotten a grant because they have somehow created the process to remove PFAS from the water and then return it to its actual elements. I don't know if you have heard of that or aware of that. I know that the Owasso, Orange County, they were informed. We had a conversation about that last week in Chapel Hill. So that is something that that company now has been given a grant to pursue that. So I don't know if you all are aware of that or not.
Well, that's good news to know that they're studying that further, and potentially it may be a less expensive way to remove the PFAS.
Yes, that is.
The technologies that we're looking at. So yes, I've heard about that technology. I wasn't quite sure how far they've advanced at this point in terms of making it market ready.
Mhm.
But I will let the committee know, and I've told the board this as well in monthly updates, that we are poised to move forward with the operational bench testing, if you will, at our water plant this year in terms of actually looking at our water composition, in which PFAS removal techniques or techniques combination
Mhm.
will get it to the required levels where we need to be for the maximum contaminant levels, which still hasn't been established with the final rule of law, if you will, and we're waiting for that as well. We think we know where those numbers are going to be, so we're aiming for that, of course. But I think as we're doing this workup at our water plant this next year, looking at that, we'll also take into consideration this other technology that may be on the horizon or other technologies. I will just remind the Finance Committee that we did apply for 2 grants last fall through DEQ.
Mhm.
They're part of revolving funding and grants programs. One was for a $500,000 grant just to offset the costs associated with the actual bench testing that we do at the water plant to help us provide with the analysis. A very extensive program. We should be hearing something from DEQ within the next couple of weeks regarding that. We also put in a separate application to help us offset some of the funding. I think that application was close to $20 million for design and construction for that project. So today I have CDM Smith working with us on that project and guiding us. And again, I hope to have some positive information for the board in the next couple of weeks regarding the status of those grants. At least we'll get some information from DEQ coming up.
Great. And my last comment regarding that, it would be nice if we could somehow inform the community that that is what we're really doing, because I did some research based upon what I've been seeing in next door, and people are making an assumption that Saguasa is not doing as much as they can to get rid of the PFAS.
Okay.
So I think it would be very important if we could kind of make sure that the community is aware of that. Only reason I said is because there was a highlight with OWASA doing the same thing, and like,
Okay.
we're no different. So I think it's important that the community knows that we're in the same, doing the same footprint and not avoiding that.
Very good. Thank you.
Last thing is, I think it's important that we do look at those positions, because as the community grows and Saguasa grows, there's no way to continue to maintain the functionality if we don't have proper staff in place.
Thank
That's all I have.
you.
Anyone else? Any comments?
The only thing is, I was hoping we could move forward with the matching funds for 401k and get that up to 3%. The county's looking at it, and we're lagging behind the competitors. And these are competitors for our employees. And I don't know what you personally experienced, but at the county level, we've lost some potential employees that dropped out because of the benefits package and the fact that they were 5%, no matching, you know, in other places, and the county was 2% matching. Would like to see some figures on that, see how much it cost us, and also, you know, we're striving to get back to 100% depreciation. I was hoping we could move to 95%. Doesn't look like it under this budget. So,
Well, I think there's, and thank you for those comments. I think there's opportunities, and this is part of the reason for this meeting, to say, here's the budget we are presenting to the finance committee. There's opportunities to have discussion about obviously the entire budget or certain programs within. And I think that we started to, I don't recall the actual year. Richard, help me here if you can remember, or Priscilla's in our audience as well, HR manager. When do we start the implementation of the 401k match?
That was 2019, if I recall, with the new personnel pay study that the board approved. I believe it was 7/1/2019. And that pay study's recommendation was that we start with a 1% and then add 1% per year until the 5th year. So you have 5% to be competitive. And then, of course, usually every 5 years, that means.
That was the first year I was on this.
So we're in the 5th year with this budget.
Okay.
And we're still at 2.
yeah, so we're behind the recommendation from the 2019.
Didn't we decide last year that the participation didn't go up? And that's why we didn't change it?
We have discussed that participation with budget low. And Priscilla can add more to this, but just on the payroll side, I can say that we now have 20 participants, which is a much higher percentage than the old days when it was 0 or 1%, and we had maybe 5 or 6.
Yeah,
So that is a significant
20 is significant from what we started.
47 employees now participating for that. And we did see that number increase when the board last year, finance committee recommended that it go from 1 to 2.
But the employees of Seguasa get the LGERs. That comes out, right? And that is at 8% right now?
That is 6% of the employee, has been for as long as I've been here. The employer goes up each year, and you can see that reflected in the executive summary. The employer percentage went up 0.75% again this upcoming year.
Because what Creedmoor does is, because that money's taken out of their paychecks, no matter what, we do an input of 401k to subsidize that amount of money. And it goes into 401k. It's not that we give it back to the employees. We just put it in there. It's not a matching. It's just to offset the deduction that we have no control over. Right, Ruben?
Yeah. It's the, based on Mr. Gooch's comment, is there a consensus or request by the finance committee for staff to look at the increase in that percentage amount?
I would think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we could have some figures to determine if it fits into the budget and.
Okay. Potentially a 1% increase. Is that what we're focusing on here to get us here incrementally?
I'd say look at add 1% this year.
Yeah, I think so too. We'll have to correct.
Please.
Yeah. I think we're pretty much in agreement to look at adding 1%, see how much it's going to cost. And if we could look at how much it costs to go from 90 to 95% on the depreciation. Because we have been below 100% for 5-6 years.
We've made great strides since I joined this.
Yeah.
I mean, when Tim was here, I think it was 80%.
That is correct. That's
So it
correct.
started at 80, and I'm glad that we're moving as far as we have.
Mhm.
But with the expenses that are coming down the road, yeah, we need to.
But also, I think local government looks at us if we stay below 100% for so many years.
Okay.
Okay, so I've always put that in our notes here. We're gonna look at the request to look at the increase of the 401k program, 1% up to 3% total, and also to look at the costs associated with moving the depreciation schedule from 90% to what was the number, please?
95.
95. And I'm sure we'll also give you a perspective on what it is to be 100%, right? You have to run the tables anyway, right? The analysis.
I remember when we went to 80% and we knew that wasn't sustainable from an organizational standpoint.
Yeah. We started it for a while.
Okay. What we'll do is we'll move on to the budget ordinance, and Richard, I'll rely on you again just to review the FY 24-25 proposed budget ordinance for us, okay?
Okay. The 24-25 proposed budget ordinance is in your agenda packet. It is estimated the following revenues will be available in the water and sewer fund for the fiscal period beginning July 1st, 2024, and then in June 30th, 2025. In comparison to the approved fiscal year 23-24 budget, fiscal year 24-25 water sales and sewer use charges were estimated using a revenue increase of $550,000 for water and revenue increase of $400,000 for sewer. And the budget includes $199,897 for capital improvement. The water revenues, I'll read it for the recorded meeting agenda. The water revenues are projected to be $6,250,000. Wastewater revenues are projected to be $9,200,000. Non-billing revenue projected to be $397,800. Interest income projected to be $572,714. Transferring no fund balance. This budget is balanced without fund balance use, as mentioned by the executive director during the summary. Total revenues of the financing sources $16,420,514. The following amounts are hereby appropriated in the Water Sewer Enterprise Fund for fiscal period beginning July 1st, 2024 and ending June 30th, 2025. The expenditures are budgeted as follows: administration, $1,869,000; human resources, $144,150; engineering, $536,478; billing and collections, $527,793; raw water, $62,000; water treatment plant, $2,025,233; wastewater treatment, $2,568,316. In the utility division, it's broken down as meter reading, $171,214. Water line maintenance, $1,029,511. Sewer line maintenance, $1,028,385. Pump stations and towers, $811,488. Depreciation board and others. And just as a reminder, 2.4 million of this number is depreciation alone. It's $2,695,342. Projects and studies currently is $50,000. The capital improvement projects will be more forward in the budget because they've already been appropriated. Debt service, $3,769,735. Total expenditures, $16,420,514. And then, of course, the grand totals of estimated revenues of finance and sources and active expenditures and other financing uses for all funds for fiscal period July 1st, 2024 and then June 30th, 2025 are shown below. The revenues again are $16,420,514. Expenditures for that same amount. And section 3, of course, has the verbiage to allow the executive director to reallocate appropriations between line items except for salary benefits within a department to a maximum of $10,000. That reappropriation must be recorded like other reappropriations and reported at a subsequent board of directors meeting after the funds have been moved. All transfers must be in accordance with North Carolina statutes. The executive director shall not have any authority to appropriate fund balance or to increase total appropriations. Finance director shall establish and maintain all financial records which are in accordance with this ordinance and in accordance with the appropriate state statutes for the state of North Carolina.
All right, thank you. Any questions or comments from the committee members?
Why did administration jump $300,000 from last year? That's a big jump.
Could you give us some detail on that?
Sure. A lot of that is paid through paying benefits, because if you're comparing the upcoming 24-25 proposed ordinance to the 23-24 original ordinance, recall that there was no assistant finance director position in there.
Okay.
So you have one position being added over last year.
Okay.
The board approved the new contract for the executive director. So those expenditures have increased. And those are the major factors that differ. There's also built into that department a bulk of financial software increase, recall, goes into the admin department. So as we go to a more robust financial software, that's
In that number.
a hit to that department's budget. That and the billing department have huge hits to that budget. One thing that I will mention that's also skewing the numbers for the proposed budget that will go away after next year is that we're anticipating implementation to transition during the 24-25 year. It'll still be going on. So we have built into the budget that we're going to have to pay an annual subscription to both software companies because they'll both be running during that part of that fiscal year. So in essence, some of your software costs are double for 24-25, and that will revert back assuming implementation is completed next fiscal year. Then we'll go back to paying one software. So those are the major factors.
So the HR changes will be made in September. Are those changes included in the human resource numbers, or is that under administration?
You're talking about
Yeah, thank you. So I think the program you're referring to would be our payroll changes or our payroll system changes. Is that what you're referring to?
Some changes.
Okay. We have an update for that. I think that item sits outside the budget. I think that we're suggesting that we look at using fund balance. Is that correct for that one-time expense instead of putting it into our operating budgets?
Okay.
We have that topic coming up later on, I believe, as far as an update. Payroll transition update, 6 other topics. We can talk about that further if you'd like. But I believe that's where it's about budget.
that HR is correct. And as far as discussion about the ordinance, it is not included in the proposed budget. And that's why it's listed further down on the agenda as a discussion.
It's good to see debt service drop by 30,000.
Well,
Paid off something, a little bit of something.
as the debt becomes closer to being paid off, the interest expense, of course, declines. So that's where you're seeing it's not necessarily paying off, but the principal's decline, so interest expense.
And everything is a set interest number on our debt service, right?
We have the variable.
That's all I had, my dear.
All right.
If there's nothing further on that item, of course, we can always come back to those items. We'll move on to 4B, FY 24-25 budget assumptions and costs. You can see on page 13 of your agenda. This is just a summary again of the fixed costs and budget assumptions that were added into our budget to build our budget. I did cover this in my budget message earlier. So it's just a repeat as we get into moving forward with our next item, which would be rate reviews. But is there anything before we move on to that? Is there anything that the board has any questions or comments about regarding budget assumptions and fixed costs?
Any comments?
I got nothing.
And that last bullet item, obviously on that page, it talks about what we just discussed in terms of the payroll transition program as well. Okay, well, very good. All right, so the next item, 4C, is our fiscal year 24-25 rate review. So Richard, I'd like you to talk to us about that, if you would, please. And then the Finance Committee, I just did want to mention for Commissioner Kaczynski that we also have some additional handouts at your desktop with some larger views for you. We didn't do a proposed rates chart. I think that one came over clearly, but some of the other charts, you have those as well for reference sake. So, all right, Richard, if you would, talk to us about a rate review here, if you would.
Um, just as a reminder from our financial review, the regular board meeting, the new rate model thus far, 6 months into the year is ended. Year post, and it is tracking very close to the what rate model projections for sewer and water revenue were. So we are trusting that rate model takes forward into the fiscal year as well. So we took the proposed budget as it's presented to the finance committee today. We updated that into the rate model to let it determine rates and revenue needs for the organization to meet those ordinance and expenditure needs. You have in your packet before you what your current rates are. And then what the proposed rates are to raise revenue to make this a balanced budget as presented today. Just a quick comparison, you see, I won't read every base rate that's included in the chart, but you'll see the 3/4 inch, which is most of the residential customers, or pretty much all of your residential customers. That would result in the current rate being 44.64 for your base rate. Remember, when we switched to this new rate model in the current year, base rate now includes 0 gallons of water. It used to historically include 2,000, so make that clear. So the base rate was 44.64 current year. If you adopted the rates as is, that combined rate would be 44.91, an increase of 27 cents or 1% on the base rate. That is the base rate alone. I will bring forward the residential tiered rates for volume. You see that currently combined residential rate for tier 1, which is your first 0 gallons to 4,000 gallons, is $21.44 per 1,000 gallons. And then after 4,000, tier 2 becomes $25.21 per 1,000. You see that under the proposed rate structure, that comes to $22.62 for the first 4,000, which is a $1.18 per 1,000 increase for 6%. Its tier 2 rate goes from $25.21 per 1,000 to $26.80 per 1,000. That represents an increase of $1.59 per 1,000. Again, a 6% increase. And then, of course, you'll see that the non-residential rates and the larger meter bases kind of mirror that trend. In your package, you also have, since the new tiered rate is a bit more difficult to calculate the impact to a customer's bill because you volume based, we did create a proposed residential chart of 0 gallons to 10,000 gallons, which represents the bulk of or the majority of your residential customers. And you can see what the current bill is for those usages and what the proposed rates would represent in a new bill for those customers, to give you some perspective on the impact to the residential customer base. Again, I reiterate that this is the residential customer base. Larger users that are non-residential are not reflected in this chart.
The important part of the pages to make a comment on this chart, we can also go back to the table, but we'll keep it on the chart for now, is you can see basically how our model is set up. And I think it's very well depicted in this chart, so that as you can see at the left-hand side, as far as your usage, how you're very close in terms of your current rates versus your proposed rates. And as the volume increases and gets wider into your tiers, you have greater separation or more costs. And that's exactly how the rate model is built. Again, this is just on the residential rate comparison because that's the majority percentage of our customer base, correct?
That's correct.
About residential. If you go back, if we can leave this slide for a moment and go back to the table. Richard, one of the questions I had when I was looking at proposed rates, just to offset expenses, I was looking at a couple of scenarios, and the finance committee members may have the same question. When you look at this rate schedule, and you look at the fact that Seguasa administration is requesting 3 additional positions to this, what is the effect of that request as far as that expense on these rates. And we did take a look at that analysis. I don't think the chart is provided to you in this booklet here, but Richard, I'd like you to give us some perspective on that in terms of what we saw in terms of the operational costs and how those are booked basically to the volume or the base charge versus some of our operating costs. If you know, you and I had that discussion. So can you give us some perspective on that?
Of the rate increases included in here, of course, you have your typical operational expense increases. Your costs are going up, personnel costs are going up, all costs are going up. The positions themselves account for one of the largest, probably the largest part of the increase. I would say, I don't recall the exact percentage, but at least 25% of this increase that's reflected here is a result of adding those 3 positions.
Okay.
So that is that is some indication of the cost to Sawassa that adding those 3 positions is projected in the budget to cost approximately $250,000, $250,000. So of the increase, again, these rates were put in the model, as you saw in the executive summary, to raise approximately 1 million additional revenues this year to offset some of the costs. And of that 1 million, approximately 1/4 of it is related directly to those 3 positions. So I don't know where you were looking to.
Yeah, and additionally, yes, thank you. I appreciate that. And when we were running some of the models here, when we pulled out that $250,000 expense, it was interesting to me that it really did not have a major effect on what you see as far as the percent increases overall to our schedule here. It was very minor. So therefore, when I took a look at those models and looked at our proposed rate increases here, of course, trying to keep a cap on them as best as we can just to meet inflationary costs, we looked at that and said, this is really an opportunity here for us to at least introduce those costs for those employees at this point to this. Of course, we can run additional schedules for the finance committee if the committee would like to see some additional schedules, i.e. Minus the requested resources or any other program changes. Of course, we won't do that on the fly today, but we will take that information, be able to bring that information back to you and share that with you at the next finance committee meeting.
And just to revisit, did I say that the largest part of the increase was the?
Yes.
Okay, that's wrong. That's the opposite. The largest part is the operational expenses.
Mhm.
Only less than 1/4 of this increase is related to the 3 positions.
Okay.
So we ran the rates without the 3 positions to see what we would just have to be made whole to get to an operating budget for operational increases. And then we went back and added the 3 positions to see what the comparison was. And of the increases that you're seeing in the increased column, it was a small amount or chunk of that. They were like $1, almost of $1.50 to the base rate or something. So you're looking at 27 cents increase, maybe only a few pennies of that is related to the 3 positions.
Again, for comparison's sake too, if the finance committee would like to see that table with that perspective, we'd be happy to run that table as well, just to see a side-by-side comparison and provide that to you. So just let us know in terms of what information you would like to see, if you'd like us to prepare.
Anybody want to see that?
The 3 additional positions. Back in 2020, when you first gave me a tour of all the plants, is this to put an operator on the night shift?
Yes, yes, it is.
Water plant and the water plant?
Exactly. So when we start looking at in 2020 across the organization resource needs, we identified about 9 or 10 additional employees. And predominantly the focus was, the priority was to add additional staff to those 2nd and 3rd shifts. We took a look at that this year and we still have those constraints. And I've updated the board monthly on some of the challenges that we've had with staffing over the last year, couple of years. As operators come in, we train them, they leave, so on and so forth. We pick up additional costs for overtime, if you will, to cover for those shifts. So when we started to look at a schedule, the request was made by the finance committee annually as to when are we going to get some type of schedule or some type of preview to add. What's the plan to add resources? We went back and looked at that priority again and said, well, I understand that the superintendents continue to ask for additional resources. I said, if I can give you one additional resource this year, We agreed that this will be a second or third shift resource, right? Because that's where we're lacking. They agreed, yes, that would help tremendously. So that's why it was put in the budget request this year. So yes, to answer your question,
So the engineering cost that we used to have when Mr. Hamlet was here, that money went to the project manager now, correct? Or is that money still sitting in there to be filled?
well, we have, in our current year, fiscal year, we added at a request, the assistant finance director.
Right?
And we had a vacancy for the engineering director. And we had a vacancy for the utility engineer. And they asked the board, and the board approved to use the utility engineer's position, if you will, for a project manager. And we did fill that position. So moving forward, you'll see when we discuss additional resources or org chart current, I have a utility engineer that's still on the org chart, but unfunded. So we've basically taken that position out.
Okay.
And it's
That's what I wanted.
It's unfunded.
It's not in this budget.
It's not in this budget. It will appear still in the org chart that I asked the board to approve, and we'll have a different line type or shading to show that it's unfunded. I didn't want to take the position completely off the schedule, but that is correct. It's not funded in this position coming
So
up.
I'm gonna have, are you gonna come to us 6 months from now and ask us to refund that position?
You know,
Or do you think you're
no,
gonna
it
find a way?
won't be 6 months. That's for sure. I think that the challenge we've had is really filling the lead engineer's position. The market is so tight. And one of the discussions we had internally, including HR, I point to Priscilla sitting behind us, was that we really need to continue focusing on trying to get that lead position or a lead position filled to help us, and especially to take some of the pressure off the things that I'm doing, running the jobs, a lot of the engineering work that's going on. So we said it really doesn't make sense to carry those two positions until we fill a position, and then give the opportunity, once the position is filled, for the engineering or engineer to have an opportunity to acclimate in the organization and discover what that person needs as far as the greatest assistance. So that other position may appear next year as a budget request to come back onto the budget. It may not. It may be reduced to another project manager in the organization, or at some point we may truly have to look at our engineering model as relying more on our outside consultants to help us through this, which we've done, which is, as we mentioned at the beginning of the discussion, we see increased costs in legal and engineering professional services because we're not able to do in-house what we were able to do with that position.
Because most of our companies that we hire have an engineering commitment in the contract.
Oh, that is correct. They are professional engineers that we've hired, and we have 3 engineering firms that can assist us with projects.
But that's on that project, not on the operation of
So
civil.
that is correct, and that's a very good way to put it, because a lot of work has to be generated and followed up on staff here in terms of keeping things moving forward. Our consultants do a great job for us in helping us to manage a project, but there's a lot of input and direction that's needed on staff to manage that and keep it going, as well as daily decisions in our operations and things that are going on, and new developments, those type of things. Thank you. Any additional questions by the committee regarding current rates, proposed rates on this schedule?
Is this bill comparison an average?
Let's go to the next screen, referring to the chart.
The bill comparison is just calculating someone's bill, a residential customer's bill
Right.
at the 0, 1,000, 2,000 gallons. That's not, I wouldn't say that's average.
It's not actual. It's just generic. It's not actual.
It would be the actual rates if someone fell exactly at 4,000 or 5,000 or 6,000. Is that what you're asking me?
Because this is, I'm using between 1,000 and 2,000, and my bill is not in this range. So that's why I'm asking, and I've seen, like, Mayor Jordan has seen lots of conversation on social media about the bills are much higher than that. With a consumption of 2,000 gallons, they're saying that their bills are much higher, over $100. So that's why when it says 9015, and I'm seeing 8752, I'm wondering, why are they saying this And I've seen it. My bills are more than that. So I'm wondering where these numbers are coming from.
No, if your bill is exactly 2,000, that's what your bill would be. Now, if your bill is 2,100, then it's gonna be slightly above that bullet point for 2,000.
Because I'm running about 1,700 and it's higher than the 2,000 number. Just saying. Because all I can talk about is my personal experience, and that's why I'm saying that. So that's why I'm saying, where did these numbers come from? I was wondering if it was an average, and that's why it's lower than what I've got.
No, I think that if you roll back to the table before this, it's actually the chart is related basically to those numbers. Correctly, in terms of the actual gallon marks that we have, the different points that Richard was referring to, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. That's where that is. So it's not with respect to your bill and your values. We would just have to take a look at that just to see how that charts.
Yeah.
We'd be glad to do that with you on the side. Look at that.
Absolutely.
For perspective too, when you look at this table, when you look at our tiers that are broken out, there's a lot of discussion in the development of our rate model in terms of what is that point in terms of where you've got the majority of your residential customers, what are they using per month? Remember that discussion, less than
And it's
4,000 gallons per month?
4,000 is the
That was the
peak.
that was kind of the
Breaks.
exactly. So
Just pull up my bill. Are you going to argue with me?
No, I would not pull up your bill. You do not pull up individual customer data in a public meeting.
but I just want to get back to the tiering. That's how that was determined as well. And of course, you see that in the line chart that you presented. All right. So does the committee have any further comments or questions or direction for administration topic?
If I'm jumping ahead, I don't mean to. I'm just asking. But the base charge increase is what I'm looking at. So my question is, how many AMRs out of all the meters that we have are already set up? I know we're working them in, but how many do we have right now? I know that's a number's not on the top of your head. I understand that.
I think
Is it more or less than 25, 50%?
we use the 6,000 or 6,500. What is it?
Roughly 6,000.
Yeah.
So roughly 6,000 endpoints out there. We have the majority of our endpoints, our meter endpoints are AMR, automatic radio read meters. They are of different makes and models and generations, meaning some are new and some are old. And traditionally, when water meters get old, they record slower as far as their values. They don't increase, they actually record slower. In the city of Creedmoor, for example, out of the AMR meters that we have in the ground, the endpoints, we have about 2,200 meters out there. We've replaced about 200 with brand new AMRs. We have about 2,000 to go. And that's part of our capital improvement program, our $1 million replacement program. That's part of our existing CIP.
Right.
That is something that will happen between now and this time next year as far as getting those changed out. So we will have newer generation AMR/AMI meters in the ground. And the AMI meters, the difference is that they provide opportunity that we can collect that data more often. It would require some additional radio towers, some receivers, and additional investment in equipment that we're not looking at this point. We wanted to simply get all of our meters up to a certain standard, type, manufacturer, and year. And so in our operating budget annually, we have plugged in close to 200, 300 meters that we normally go out and replacing meters to keep them up to speed. Our goal is to have meters out there no older than 10 years in our system. That's our goal. And that's one of the reasons why we're putting a great emphasis on that meter set that's out within the city of Creedmoor. Those meters were changed out before Seguasa actually took over the city of Creedmoor's, purchased the city of Creedmoor system. So I believe it was a 2008, 2010 project possibly. So we've got some age on those meters, hence the reason for replacement.
Because I know that our neighborhood has the automatic meter readers in them with the So once we go to AMIs, what happens to the meter readers?
If we go to AMI, if and when we go to AMI, well, traditionally you can use those resources elsewhere in your organization. That's been one of the topics. The other topic has been that those meter readers, if you will, get trained to work on AMI equipment because it's a whole new technology now that's out there that needs a resource to understand how to work that. So it takes a somewhat of a different educational and training to work on those electronics, but that's on the horizon.
They'll be absorbed into a different position is the point I'm making.
Exactly. That's what we're looking at this point. Of the resources in elsewhere within the organization.
That's what I needed to know.
Okay, so we will move off of 4C and move to 4D, FY 24-25 review of services and fees. So Saguasa's approved FY 23-24 rates and fee schedule being reviewed and updated as necessary to reflect actual costs of providing services. The proposed schedule will be presented at the Market Finance Committee meeting. Further discussion. This meeting and what we gain from this meeting helps us to fine tune some of the items within the rates and fee schedule. And if you remember, it's a companion document to the actual budget. It's quite extensive. I don't know, it's 35 or 40 pages, but it's basically a catalog of all the rates and fees that we have captured in one document and for the services. And of course, we look at those costs in terms of fees reflecting actual costs for providing the services. So again, we're going through that. We'll provide that entire draft to the Finance Committee for the next meeting to look at just the red lines. And that's basically how we present it to you, basically a red line document. With respect to the FY 24-25 rates and fee schedule, staff is evaluating the implementation of a monthly technology fee to offset the costs associated with the individual online bill payment functions. The goal is to lever the features that will be available with the new utility software to encourage more online self-serve payments, thus reducing costs associated to staffing the Welcome Center. We have an opportunity to talk about that later on in today's meeting coming up. We'll get into that. I think it is item 6, other topics. 6A, Tyler Technology Customer Portal and Merchant Service Fees. Any questions or comments on those two bullet items?
Yeah, we'll wait till we get to 6A.
What was that, please?
That's when we get to 6A, I'm sure we'll probably have some questions.
Okay. All right, moving on. Next topic, item 5, FY 24-25 personnel in position review. I did cover this somewhat in the opening message this morning about the fiscal year 24-25 budget. Again, the request is to add 3 entry-level utility operator positions, including 1 operator to be added each to the 3 utility operational areas: wastewater facility, water facility, and utility maintenance. I would like to footnote a comment I made previously about shift work. We do not run our utility maintenance teams 24/7. They're basically just a first shift. So this additional employee for the utility maintenance team would simply be on our first shift. But we're looking to dedicate that employee more of a focus on our fire hydrant maintenance, our flushing, our valve exercising and testing, which is something that has been a priority focus for the organization for the last couple of years. We talked about this earlier, but I'll just mention this again to lessen the operational costs in the FY 24-25 budget. We'll also fund one of the 2 vacant engineering positions. Additional consideration will be given to funding the second engineering position during the FY 25-26 budget process. We have a proposed organizational chart attached and job classification scale. And I believe that the board has those, or the Finance Committee has those handouts at their desktop as well. Just a summary table, you can see the difference between the board approved FY 23-24 and the request for 24-25 as far as the positions, and noting the one that is unfunded, which we've talked about as far as utility engineer. The following page, we have the proposed organizational chart. And you can see on the chart, the utility engineer's position highlighted in the yellow, unfunded for the proposed fiscal year budget. And then you can see in some of the operator boxes, the red text where it says add one, so on and so forth, just to give you an idea where those operators and that staff would fall within the organizational chart. And I'll stop there before we look at the existing classification scale. So committee have any questions or comments about the staffing request?
You have a water treatment plant operator advertised on a website. That is a job that has not been filled. Is that included in this 3 or is that 4?
Well, that position is reflected already on the chart that you have in front of you as an existing employee. Okay. So when we say add one, it isn't to fill an existing position that's already approved. It's simply to add an additional resource to the approved budget. So
we have an interim right now, right?
we have an interim vacancy, which is correct. And that tends to plague us all the time in terms of positions coming and going. In fact, I think we had the position filled briefly, and then the new employee decided that just wasn't the correct line of work for him. So now the position is vacant.
So that money's already in the budget. That's already funded. So it's going to be more for funding.
That is correct.
Okay.
Any other questions? I think we're good.
Moving on to page 19. This is the FY 23-24 classification schedule. This will be updated following board approval, the FY 24-25 budget. So this schedule that I have in here is just to give you perspective on the grade, the status, the classification, the minimum, midpoint, and maximum salary ranges that we have in here, hourly ranges as well. We have different status classifications for non-exempt and exempt employees. You can see the schedule that you're looking at in your budget book right now. Proposes effective July 1st, 2023. We traditionally bring this to the board for approval following the budget approval. So if the board were to approve this budget for the next fiscal year, in June, you would see most likely this schedule coming at that same time. Once we know we're going to have a budget, if it's done in May, we can get it June. So it's kind of a timing issue as well once we get closer to the budget. And then when we talk about, and the perspective here, the relationship here is that we've talked about in our budget, was it a 3%? 3% wage adjustment. So when we talk about a 3% wage adjustment across the schedule, basically we would go into this schedule and it would be updated as far as your minimum rate to that 3%, and that would cascade into your midpoint and your maximum rate, and we would have a new schedule. We haven't produced that for you today. Just wanted to give you perspective on how those two items are related as far as our overall budget request and also our classification scale. Any questions or comments on that at this point?
Looks like we're good.
Would you like to see an updated schedule with the 3% added to it at the next finance committee meeting, or is that something that is not of interest at this point?
That sounds like a good idea.
Okay. I think this is a good point to at least request a break before we get into item 6. Would a recess be okay with the finance committee at this point?
Absolutely.
Okay.
5-10 minute break or
1 minute?
10 minute break? Sure, absolutely. We will take a 10-minute recess.
Thank
you. We are now back in session. We're going to start with going back to our director, Mr. Schroyer.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. So we are going to dive into section 6 in our agenda, which is the FY 24-25 proposed budget, other topics. These topics include this morning Tyler Technology Customer Portal and Merchant Service Fees, System Development Fee Study Update, USDA $35 million loan, projections of debt service requirements and effect on rates, a payroll transition update, medical insurance cap update, capital improvement program proposed plan update, and a leak adjustment discussion. So our first item is the Tyler Technology Customer Portal and Merchant Services Fees. The committee will see that we have a memo addressing this item, quite lengthy in terms of the background, the discussion, and additional information. And I'll turn this over to Richard Ballmer, our finance director, to give us a background and then lead us in some discussion here on this topic. Richard?
Sure. So I'll provide the committee members with a little background on it, including some historical data. As you know, Sequasa currently accepts credit and debit card payments both online and in our payment lobby, our welcome center. Credit and debit card payments in person are considered card present payments, and they incur a much lower merchant service fee than online payments. Sequasa currently partners with Harris Software as for our online customer payment portal provider, and they partner with Clover Connect for the merchant services part of that program. In-person card present payments are provided by partnership through the North Carolina Office of State Control of the OSC. So basically, in summary, the office payments incur a much smaller merchant fee. When online payments first began at Sequasa in July of 2014, the Finance Committee at that time provided guidance that the program be cost neutral. Thus, it was determined that we assessed a $5 flat rate fee for each online payment, which covered the cost of the new payment method. On February 1st, 2016, Sequasa began accepting credit and debit cards in our lobby, as well as online, and began absorbing the fees for both the in-person and the online payments as an annual operating expense. During the fiscal year 21-22 budget process and the related Finance Committee meetings, Finance Committee will recall we discussed the cost of Sequasa was expected to rise, and we wanted to discuss whether it was still the preferred option of the Finance Committee to continue absorbing those costs. Costs to continuing to absorb the fees at that time was projected to be approximately $150,000 for fiscal year 21-22. At the guidance of the Finance Committee, we began passing that fee through to customers for online payments once the new MyGovHub payment portal with Harris was implemented and running. That became effective beginning in October of 2021. The fee for online payments then and currently is 3.25% of the total payment, and that is being passed along to the customers. Sequasa doesn't receive that money. It's assessed by the merchant services provider, and they retain that. So if you pay $100, you may have to pay $103.25 online. Sequasa gets the $100, they keep the $3.25. Due to contractual and legal restrictions, fees associated with in-person lobby payments are not passed through to customers, and they're continuing to be absorbed by Sequasa. These fees cannot currently be passed through to the customer during the payment process based on the contract through the OSC. The discussion on this topic is the board awarded the contract for new financial and billing software to Tyler Technologies at the regular board meeting on December 12, 2024. To finalize and execute the Tyler Technologies contract, Sequasa must specify how the fees related to credit and debit card payments will be handled once the new software is implemented. There are two recommended options with Tyler Technology. Option one is that Sequasa continue to absorb all fees. With this option, the fee is projected to be 2.8% of the payment amount and would be solely paid by Sequasa. It's projected that this option will result in a budgetary impact, an expense, if you will, of $120,000 per year based on projected payment patterns. There could be additional fees associated as we roll out the IVR, which is payments via telephone program related to Tyler Technologies. One comment on option one is that 120 projected increase in budgetary expenses is not captured in your proposed budget that was previously presented. Option two is to continue to pass through all fees to the customer as we do now for online payments. With this option, the fee is projected to be 3.7% of the payment amount, but would be solely paid by the customer as it is now. This would not result in an increase of operating expenses or an increase in the operating budget. Additional information, option one Sequasa absorbing all fees is Tyler Technologies' recommended option. They suggest Sequasa consider adding a technology fee on all invoices to cover the cost, similar to other public utilities. They relate to us that is the trend across the country for public utilities. Assuming that an average of 6,000 bills per month, and the average for the past few months has been about 5,925 bills. So let's stick with 6,000 for purposes of discussion, for ease of discussion. It is estimated that Sequasa would need to assess approximately a $1.95 technology fee on every bill monthly to cover the projected costs related to rolling out the new portal with credit and debit card payment program. It is recommended that the fee be included in the rate and fee schedule with language indicating that it will become effective to coincide with the implementation of the new technology's customer portal and mobile app. And we'll discuss that a little more at the end. Once Tyler Technologies payment software is implemented, Sequasa customers will have an expanded customer service portal with significant improvements over what we have now, with expanded options that are currently not available in the MyGov Hub Harris portal. Additionally, once the new service is implemented, customers will have expanded payment options, included IVR. Sequasa may choose to combine the Welcome Center in-person payments, credit debit card payment processing, with our online payment processing into a single platform using Tyler Technologies for simplified administration of the program if Sequasa absorbs the cost and fees. To pass the fee on to customers, and in person, a kiosk in our lobby would be necessary. So I will say, and that's the end of the legislative memo, but I will go back and just highlight one thing, back over to Scott, is that we have reviewed the Tyler Technologies payment portal several times as we prepared to bring the board a recommendation of which software package to choose. It is a very robust, especially compared to what we have now, portal that includes an expansion, a much greater expansion of customer services. It includes the ability for customers to readily and easily see their bill history, get copies of prior bills, see their usage history, have charts, update their contact information, their preferences for notifications. All of that will be something that we do not have now. It will be expanding the availability of what they can pay. They can pay by ACH check online. They'll be able to have telephone payments. So there'll be a much greater expansion of the payment possibilities for customers. So that's why Tyler Tech says that as they implement software across the country, that is the trend, that at that point, a fee is rolled out to absorb some of the cost of expansion.
Before we get into discussion, I just ask that you go back and make one correction.
Okay.
It said the board awarded the contract on the December 12th, 2024 meeting. And amend that to 23.
That is correct. I apologize.
That's just for the record there.
That is correct. The board approved the contract. The board of Tyler Technologies on 12/12/23, not 24.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Didn't mean to interrupt the flow.
No, that's a good observation. I didn't see it. My question is this also inclusive of having an app on your phone?
Yes, you asked, I apologize, but you're asking if it has an app.
Yes.
That is one of the things that they count very highly, is that their mobile app now will be an app on mobile phone, smartphone.
Okay, that'll be good.
That is not available right now to Sequasa customers. So no longer going to a website if you want to use an app, like that is much more modern. It also has some expanded features, like we're setting up recurring payments much more enhanced than what we have now. So there's a multitude of very significant enhancements over what we currently have available.
Will that app offer access to the Sequasa website? In the sense that they can look at upcoming meetings or notifications on
It would have a link to it, basically to jump off. It would have a link basically to get to the Sequasa website. We're going to be going through some website upgrades here in the next couple of months as well. Crystal, our communications manager, will be presenting that at an upcoming board meeting as far as the change to a better platform for us as well, better integrations for us. I'd like to add a note to Richard's presentation before the Finance Committee asks us any questions regarding this. The question may come up, why is this a topic now? And I would like to just shed some light on that we're working through the final contract with Tyler Technology. We've been working on this contract since it was basically approved back in December of 2023. And one of the items that has come up during recent discussion was this portion in here in terms of how are we going to go along with the service that they're offering, or are we not? So we're going to write in or write out basically in the contract how this is going to be performed. So we thought it was appropriate timing, obviously, to bring it to the Finance Committee for a couple of reasons. The fact that we've talked about this in previous discussions in Finance Committee meetings. We've also talked about the addition of a technology fee, which we actually have a technology fee listed in our rates and fee schedule, and the definition or the description next to it is to be considered or used potentially in the future for items. So when we look at this item, we thought this would be an opportunity to at least have the discussion again with the Finance Committee, provide you with some background information on the rates, the cost to Sequasa, and give us an opportunity to consider again, do we want to confirm how we're going to move forward staying as is? Do we want to look at some options here? And I'm not sure if there's any other options beyond what we've presented here. Richard, correct?
There was a hybrid option they offered that was very difficult to understand, so that's not included in.
No, that's right.
Here. They did have one other option that was not recommended at all.
Right. So we didn't bring that forward to the board. So, so from our management perspective, obviously we're moving to better technology for our financial system and our business systems across the entire operational area. We've taken into account during this upgrade all of the comments we've received from customers regarding some of the things that they would like to do that they don't have the capabilities to do, to provide more online payments, more timely payments, if you will, using additional resources other than coming to the window here to make their payments. So we take a look at that. We also look at, from a business perspective, those costs at the window. What does it cost us per transaction to staff those positions as well? And when we enacted the additional 3% payment a couple of years ago for the customer services, a lot of the feedback was and continues to be that it's not really a convenience fee. It seems like if you really wanted to make this convenient for us, there wouldn't be a fee associated with it. So there's different ways to look at how you drive your customers to different models. Basically, if you're going to charge a fee for a certain way to pay bills, customer may look for another direction to pay that bill without that fee associated to that. So you tend to see kind of a shift in your demographics in terms of those that may have been using it online that then went to the customer payment window instead, that didn't want to incur that fee, and so on and so forth. And I know that we track that information. I don't know off the top of my head. Maybe Richard, you know kind of what our percentages are as far as people using that or the trends for that. But I wanted to point that out to the board as well, that as we look forward in the customer payment environment, we're also looking at our increased costs for human resources to, provide these services as well. Are there more economical means for us and better technology means for us to collect those payments, provide that service, and reduce some of our operating costs at the same time? So, not saying that this will replace anyone or any current service that we offer, but in terms of our staffing, it's always a challenge with positions. And then the environment also itself can be challenging. And I don't mean our environment here. I mean, we all remember what happened during the COVID phase in terms of some of the things that we couldn't do because we really were set up technology wise to accommodate our business process. So we continue to move in that positive direction, making these improvements. Should we ever get back into a compromised position or closures or something like that, at least we have that opportunity where we've got a better business system set up, a more secure system, and easier to use. All right, thank you. So questions or comments from the committee?
First, I want to straighten out a statement I made earlier. I was not informed properly on the bill that we get in our house. And our bill is right in line with the chart. And I do apologize to Richard and the executive director and the assistant that I made that statement, because it's fine. It's fine. But So I keep getting notices from MyGovHub every single month that my bill is available. I don't use MyGovHub. Never have logged into it. I don't even know if I have a login for it. Am I being charged for that? Is Seguasa paying for that service?
No,
Send me a message saying it's ready?
that is automated for all customers as part of my GovHub portal.
Okay.
So you can go ahead and use features of my GovHub without any cost. You can go in and look at your bills, look at your usage history to a certain extent, not to the extent you can with the new software. It's not as user friendly, let's say. But you can go in and use it for reference only for free. You can set up your account. But those notifications are not for notification charges or anything of that nature. They just go out to let you know a new bill has been posted for portal if you wanted to go look at it. That way, if you didn't get one in the mail, you could say, oh, I can go access it online. There's no fee associated with that to Seguasa or to you as a customer.
Okay. Okay.
Only if you make a payment is there a fee assessed on that particular payment.
Okay. So it says due to contractual and legal restrictions, fees associated with in-person lobby payments cannot be passed through to the customers. I don't know why that is.
We partnered back in 2015 when we purchased the city of Creedmoor system. They were accepting in-lobby credit and debit card payments, and Seguasa at that time currently wasn't. So the finance committee discussed, we really need to have that available for the customers that we're now absorbing. And so we did implement that around that same time that we absorbed Creedmoor. Part of that merger, that was kind of what we reevaluated what we should do. And at that time, we partnered with the same people that were doing the merchant services for online portals. And that percentage, as you can see from the percentage, that can vary from 2.5% to 4%. Shortly after that, I did some research and came across an Office of State Controller's statewide contract for merchant services that lowered that fee by, I recall, about 40%. So that Seguasa's cost, since that was being absorbed by Seguasa, would be lower. And so we currently still have that partnership through the OSC contract. And so we pay much lower fees. As part of that contract, they prohibit you for in-person payments from passing that fee along to the customer as a per transaction fee. So that is because we're piggybacking off that state contract, and the state contracts specifically says they'll shut lock.
Right. Okay.
So that's what that's about.
How often is that machine in the lobby used? I mean, what's the percentage of? Is it?
Well, in relation to the fees and the history we've used, I will tell you that when the board implemented the fee, we talked about being implemented in October.
Yeah.
2021.
21.
That we keep history charts related to payments and how many customers pay. So, for instance, the month before we implemented the fee, passed it along to customers,
Yeah.
September of 21, let's say. Now, this was skewed a little bit because, COVID was raging at that time. So people fled online and the office was not as open as it was. But for instance, September of that year, customers paid online 2,763 online payments. So 2,700 for easy discussion. In lobby payments, we were still somewhat closed at that time. People were afraid to come in person. Lobby payments were 337. The month that we implemented the fee, October, instead of 2,700 online payments, it dropped to 2,100 payments. So approximately 600 people in protest of the fee said, I will pay by other methods. Some of those came in lobby. Some of those decided to go back to check or cash. We offer draft, which is a free option to customers. So we did see that swing.
Yeah.
And Scott and I talked about it back then, and we talked about, will that somewhat flatten out over time? Will some of those customers return to online payments? And we have not seen that occur. They have stuck kind of with the payment trend that they chose back when the fee was implemented. So we're still seeing a significant increase in traffic in our payment customer welcome center.
Yeah.
That used to, from historical charts, used to pay.
But how much use is the kiosk getting?
We don't currently have a kiosk. We
Oh.
currently have a payment machine at each window, and the customer comes in and swipes their card.
So it's automated.
Right. Now, that's considered an in-person transaction. In contrast to that, if you do what a lot of other places have done, and you go into your lobby and you put up, let's say, a computer that basically is just a computer screen, Customer goes to that screen, pulls up the account, pays through the same portal that the online people are paying. You no longer have an in-person transaction. And it can all flow through one set channel with the same rules related to fees. So we could leave, instead of having two providers, one for in-person payments, one for online, we could roll all of those into Tyler once we go live. And
They drive all the way here to use the swipe card.
that's right.
And that's costing us, I think it's 120,000 a year, the projected cost.
No, the projected cost for online payments, 20,000. We're currently absorbing the in-house payments. And let me tell you,
3.7 per, no.
let me tell you what that current expense is for the in-lobby payments that are not passed on.
Okay.
That is currently costing us about 11 to 12,000. In the budget that's being proposed, I think that number is 15,000.
15?
Let me pull that up for you. Make sure. $11. So that the cost of that program, assuming usage stays somewhat the same as it is now, is built into the proposed budget that we have for you right now for 11,000, and that is only for in-person lobby credit debit card payments. Online payments again are being passed to customers. So going back to our
And that goes through the state controller's office and we can't expose those fees, the in-person.
not if you do it through a transaction fee at the machine. Now, if you go to the technology fee approach where you're attaching a fee to a bill and not saying it's due to your payment,
Everyone's bill.
then
So I'm paying for somebody else that,
then nobody pays.
right, but I will pay fee for their usage. So the people who don't use it will be paying for the people who do use it. That's the bottom line.
I think our approach is that this is not just related to payments, that there are going to be so many other options, so much more technology out there, new websites related to Sequasa itself, not related to the software. New payment options, new customer usage options, new alert options are all built into this. So it's not just you would be paying for somebody else to pay online with a credit card. There are a lot of other technologies that are going to be rolled out at the same time that we have to with that.
Okay.
And I'll turn it over to Scott. He may have a little more insight into the IT side of what's
Sure. But I think your statement, Commissioner, gets to the point of where this discussion was several years ago when we brought this up. That is it, if somebody is going to use the service, then they should pay for the service. That's the convenience. And that's the model that was basically implemented. And we're looking at again that is true. That's a self-serve option as well. With our increases in our technology and the use in the IVR system and things that we're doing, we thought it was a good opportunity to at least revisit this with the board in terms of coming back to say, do we want to consider this expense a technology fee? Does Sequasa want to simply just look at adding this expense back into its operational expense? So there is no quote unquote 3.5% operational fee or charge fee out there for your bill, or do we want to leave it as is? So those are some of the options that we are discussing here today as well.
And I think we're getting into kind of a generational thing here. People of my generation are more likely to pay by check or more likely to go pay the bill at the window. People of the younger generations are more likely to do it on the phone. They want to do it on the phone.
Or drafted out of their bank account
Yeah.
automatically.
Right. They do that. They take those avenues. And if you're trying to encourage or accommodate our younger customers versus our older customers, that's one way of looking at it.
So that's a good point. I think one of the features we don't currently offer, but I think we will offer with this program is a text to pay.
That was going to be my next question.
That's coming. That's on the horizon. So that's a great feature. Yeah, the text to pay, click the link, make the payment over the phone. Something else that I think that I would hope that improvements in our system would help our customers is that we do have a certain set of customers that end up being up against the clock
Mhm.
to make payments on current or past due bills. And if there's an easier way that we can provide that on ramp to them to get those payments on time, is a benefit to the organization, and it would save the customer money too in terms of the additional fees that they do face for not being able to get to us on time. In other words, making it more convenient for them at the last minute potentially to click that button, to go online to make that payment, if that's what they prefer to do. Because we do have limited lobby hours here, our customer welcomes. So.
And most companies are doing text messaging, which I absolutely love.
I don't get any of that.
And to the point earlier, I think one of you asked, how many payments percentage wise do we take through debit, credit versus other payment channels? If you look at the most recent month, 2,854 customers in January paid with a credit debit card. And of those, a little over 2,000 were online and almost 800 were in person. So almost 50%, slightly less than 50% of your customers are paying by debit credit. And the answer, we have seen a swing, Mr. Gooch, from some of the checks cash or drafts to credit cards. And a lot of that, I think, is points. Everybody loves points these days. So we hear that in the lobby a lot is I pay by credit card to get my points, but I don't want to pay an online fee. So you do hear that sometimes. So roughly, I'd say 48% of our people are currently paying by debit credit card. That means the rest are paying by cash check or.
And also, this isn't related to us, but if you look at the restaurant industry, most restaurants nowadays they're either giving you a discount for cash
Yes, yeah.
or they're charging you a fee
For a credit
for a
card.
credit card. So, that's, and what they're trying to do is pass on their cost to the customer.
That's exactly right.
You see this more and more.
And that's fine, but if I pay cash, I don't have to pay it.
Yeah.
Right.
But if I pay by card, I get,
Right, but what I'm saying is, if I choose to pay my bill anyway that doesn't have a service fee,
mhm,
why should I have to pay a service fee for those who do? That's the point I'm making.
mhm.
Right.
And when we're talking about a possible rate increase, and now we're going to add $1.95 for technology fees to the bill, we're going to get criticized. I mean, now we're just upping those statements little bit by little bit, marginally.
But you look at the figures Richard's putting out there, over 50% of your customers are, or about 50% already pay by credit card.
Mhm.
And, how many others would pay or would take advantage of the online services if they didn't have to pay the whatever fee we're charging now? Because we got a lot of pushback on that fee when we implemented it.
And he said, what, 2,700 people were doing it during the COVID era. And when COVID went away, it dropped down to 2,100 and then some are coming back and still doing it again.
No, the drop was when the fee was implemented.
Right.
So when the fee was implemented as through the customers,
Right.
that's when we saw that.
The 800.
Now it's coming back up.
It has
Now.
a slight bit, but not enough to be
Yeah.
material. So it's kind of stayed flat. We expected it to be a protest somewhat for a few months, and then gradually, for convenience, those customers would return online. What we saw was those customers still pay, most of them by credit debit card, but now they prefer to come in person and still get their points, but not pay on.
Pay online. Okay.
And so as we get ready to sign this contract, as Scott said, this is the perfect time for the board and the finance committee to revisit this, see how your feelings are, and give us guidance on if you want us to build it into the Seguas is going to absorb it in the budget. So it's a good, perfect time for discussion as we implement this new contract, because we have to make that decision before we can sign a contract anyway.
And you've got some cards that give 1.5% across the board.
Yeah.
With higher on certain purchases. And you've got others that give 2% across the board and higher on certain.
And that's a personal choice. That's
Yeah.
the point I'm making. Yeah.
And I think all the discussion they're having is very valid. That's a guidance of the committee and the board discussion. Some people are going to feel one way, some the other way, and I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. It's just what guidance you want to give to the organization.
Right. So just to, obviously additional conversation will continue, but I think just to kind of boil it down here in terms of some options, what we're looking for today is guidance from the finance committee on maybe a couple of options here. Keep current system of payment as is, let customer pay convenience fee. That's an option. Keep it as is, no changes to our system. Another option would be Seguasa assume all costs and don't charge a convenience fee or tech fee. This will increase the budget, proposed budget for the next operating year,
Which will in turn increase the rates.
right? Or Seguasa option 3, implement a technology fee for customers to pay for tech related
I don't know.
services.
Where's option 3?
No, I'm just summarizing.
Oh, okay.
Wait a minute, where's option 3?
I'm just summarizing for you just from our conversation. I don't think one of our options was to keep, was it as is? There's always an as is option.
As is.
Okay.
So the 3.7,
Technology.
if we projected the fee to 3.7, would that cover the cost of the service charges for Tyler Technologies?
That would be a direct pass through of all costs from Tyler Technologies. So yes, we would not, Seguasa has nothing to do with that fee.
Right, that goes straight to them. I got that.
Collect it from the customer, they keep it. So, if that option is 3.7 is what they're saying. They will charge a customer to keep their fee. Now, they are allowed to adjust that. And I think it's after, don't hold me to this, I have to look at the contract again, but I can't remember if it's annually or if they must keep that rate for the first 3 years. But I believe annually they can look at who's using what types of cards because their fees vary based on Discover, American Express, Visa, and so forth. And they can adjust that fee up or down. Again, it's out of Seguasa's control when it's being passed through to the customer. We don't get to set that fee or moderate that fee or control that fee in any way.
And
What's the fee for MyGovHub? It's still 3.25?
The 3.25% is fee and it was passed through to the customer.
Right.
That's correct.
so that would increase. Is that correct? To 3.7%?
3.7 from 3.
So it'd be 3.7 across the board, whichever option you use. If you use it'd be a convenience fee for MyGovHub or Tyler.
No, my GovHub
Sorry.
will be replaced by
By
Tyler.
Tyler.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So once my GovHub sunsets and Tyler goes live at the same time, then a customer that was paying on my GovHub would have paid $103.25 for a $100 bill.
No, it's
It would be
$103.7.
$103.70 the next day on Tyler Text.
And it would cost Seguasa to absorb these fees approximately 11,000.
Mhm.
No, 120,000.
Oh, that's option 1.
The in-house payments are already being paid 11,000. So that will stay the same if we don't leave the OSC contract. The
Okay.
question becomes the online payments. Are you going to absorb 120,000 in fees? Or are you going to pass that projected fee cost to customers using that payment portal, payment by payment as they pay like they do now?
So we're not discussing the 11,000 rate yet.
No, that's a
No.
separate discussion. Did you want it to be 120 and we absorb that fee? We keep absorbing the 11, which would be 131,000 a year. That's a different discussion. I can see where it's confusing. It's many moving parts in this discussion.
Right. Most industries or utilities are passing that fee on to the customer.
Absolutely.
Now, part of this requires us to put a kiosk in the center.
Neither one.
If we want to pass the fee through to the customer and we want to leave the OSC contract, and I have 2 different avenues for 2 different payment
Right.
methods. and we wanted to have all credit and debit cards flowing through one fee,
One.
one process.
Okay.
Then you'd put a kiosk, and now you would no longer use OSC. Tyler would do all of our
Well,
credit and debit card payments, regardless of where they were made. And that would follow whichever option you choose, whether you want us to absorb it, or whether you want to pass it through.
Is there, any your peak hours when you have customers making payments? Would a kiosk reduce the waiting line?
Possibly, depends on whether the line shifts from the window to the kiosk.
Which line are
Yeah.
you getting?
I mean,
I mean,
Not
it
really.
would be like adding a third person.
Like McDonald's now has the kiosk and a lot of people don't use it. They go to the window to talk to a person.
If both windows are tied up, let's say with a new service appointment, which takes 20 to 30 minutes. So both of them are working with one single customer that's going to take 20 to 30 minutes, and it's late fee day, let's say. And you've got several people coming in, then yes, they could go to that kiosk if they're paying with debit credit card. So that would speed their process along. But if they were paying with cash or check, they still have to
Still gotta wait.
for the window. So, you know, it may give them a different option that would be more expedient, but not necessarily.
exactly. Yep. Just keep it simple.
Keep in mind that those same customers would be able to access that from their mobile device and not even have to visit our facility.
Yeah, that's true. They could just pay from their phone and not even have to come in.
Exactly.
Option 2 is what I'm looking at. Yes.
You need an answer from us?
We don't got it from the committee before we can move forward with politics and the proposed budget. Yes,
I'm looking at option 2.
Me too.
passing the fees through to the customer.
Mm,
At the time, coupled with that, at the time that we go with Tyler Tech, would you recommend that the lobby stay on a different payment avenue with no fees, or would you recommend that now the kiosk and have everything flowing through Tyler Tech so that customers don't flood the lobby to avoid the fee, I guess?
I guess this is option 2A.
Yeah, that's kind of an option of that option too. That's correct.
Yeah,
The card present payments are costing Sigwasa how much money?
11,000.
That's what I thought.
Yes.
Kiosk.
So now the people who pay with credit cards will still be paying the 3.7%. Is that correct?
Everybody who pays with.
Everybody.
Right.
Whether you use a credit card at the window
Or
or not.
online. Yes, it's
You just
consistent.
increase those customers 3.7% that pay with a credit card at the window.
So
They'll pay at the kiosk. Yeah.
No, they don't
Possibly.
have to pay at the
They don't have
kiosk.
to.
Or if
They
you,
still pay at the window.
or if you pay online, it'll be 3.7 also.
That way it's this complete fairness.
But what I'm trying to get you to understand is we just raised the fees on the customers who are currently coming in and paying a credit card at the window. You just raised them 3.7 and you're okay with that.
Because otherwise I have to pay $1.95 in my market.
Actually, you don't.
Yes, I do.
It's a good point. So I think that it helps to kind of visualize our welcome center. When you go up to the window, when you come in the lobby, basically you have a window to your left and a window to your right. And jump in here to help me as necessary. And you have the card reader machines up there at the actual window.
Mhm.
And so the customer comes up to the window and they say they would like to pay via credit or debit, right? And there's a machine there, correct? Okay, so they're in person at the window, correct? And so we do not charge a fee for that transaction because they are in person at the window, physically standing there, correct? That's correct. Okay, so now if you take a kiosk and put it 5 feet away from them all, then they would go to the kiosk, pay their bill, use their credit card, and they'd be charged 3.7% payment, correct?
that's correct.
So the window really ends up being for
Cash.
checking
Cash
only,
customer service.
right?
Only.
Service.
Now, there's,
And that is if we use the option of doing away with the current system that we're using at the window.
you have to replace the full line.
That's why I said 2A and 2B.
Now there's a B. Wait a minute, let me
Yeah,
write.
because, 2 just doesn't address going away from, what is it, the OSB?
OSD. And
Yeah.
and one thing for the committee to think about during this discussion also is there is another option. And that
Lord,
option
there's a
is,
C.
that option is we do not accept credit and debit card payments at all in the Welcome Center. If you want to pay by that, you
It's
do
cash,
IBR. That is another option that we've never discussed, but that is an option. You may not have a customer favorable feedback from that. That is an option.
Yeah. So where we at?
But it does say that assuming an average of 6,000 bills per month, it is estimated that CWASA would need to assess a $1.95 technology fee on every bill monthly to cover the projected costs. And I think we're going to get a lot of pushback on that on people who pay their bills any other way. And they're going to say, why do I have, they're going to get $1.95.
You're going to get pushback on that. Absolutely. That question. But also, if you start charging 3.7%
7.
to the people who are accustomed to walking up to the window and using the credit card, if you're going to start charging them 3.7%, you're going to get pushback from them.
So they can still come in and use the credit card
Or they can pay by cash or check.
or cash or check. I mean, it's a personal choice that they're using their cards because they want to get the points. They're going to get the points on the 3.7 also.
And
It's on the total
there could be
transaction.
another motivation there that you're not talking about.
Yeah.
That could be they're paying the bill on the last day and they're getting 30 more days
Mhm.
by using the credit card.
So let me ask this question, because this is not, I can't remember it off the top of my head. Do we charge a late fee to people who are late on their bills? Or do we just disconnect in 60 days?
No, there's
Yeah, late
a late fee. And
Wait a minute, did we raise the late fee a couple years ago?
Yes, you did.
No, I raised the reconnect fee.
that's correct. The late fee has not been raised. I don't think in my time at Saguas.
No.
What is the late
I was
fee?
gonna say, what's
You know
the late
what?
fee?
It's $5 or 1.5%. Whichever is.
I remember several years ago you
$5.
saying something about that.
We did the reconnect fee because I thought maybe it would stop because the revenue we're collecting in those fees
Yeah.
was so high. I thought if we raised it, people
Would
would.
encourage people.
I understand everybody's got different situations. It's not always a reason that they can't pay it on that day. I got that. And I didn't mean to be heartless about it, but I'm just trying to help everybody.
Right.
But
Trying to-
when we are just paying those fees arbitrarily, some people are, I just thought I would let me bring it to your attention and you could save this money.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Are we talking about raising the late fees? I mean, where are we going with this?
So
I didn't mean to bring that up. I just didn't know if we charged it.
What I heard last,
$5 hasn't been raised since the inception of Sigwasa.
I don't recall it being raised since I've been here since 20.
Oxford charges $10 or 1.5%.
It's been 5 or 1.5% for many, many years of that
That's Oxford's.
since it was.
So you're on Oxford's water.
Yeah, but business,
It's been a Sigwasa.
my business is in Oxford, so my home is in Butler. I'm just saying my business is in Oxford and it's a late fee is $10 or 1.5%. I just pulled up my bill to see.
so the decision note I heard previously from the finance committee was to pass fees through to the customer and add a kiosk to the welcome center so that all fees are paid and collected via the one credit card system or one Tyler technology system.
Keep it simple.
When do we charge that late fee? I mean, is it like if you're 10 days late, you get a late fee?
could I respectfully ask that we
Focus on this piece.
finish this item?
Okay.
So,
All right.
Something else.
All right, I'm sorry.
We may.
Yes, Scott, that's my opinion.
Yeah.
Pass it on to the customer. It's their convenience fee.
Regardless of payment. That's,
Is that the
That's what
direction?
I'm hearing.
Is that the direction from the finance committee?
okay, then I apologize. I'll be glad to answer your. I just didn't want us to get our next.
I didn't know if we ever charged late fees. I'm like, wait a minute, late fees, disconnection fees, what do we got?
So, okay, so your bill is dated, a bill just went out February 20th, let's say, and you've got your bill, if you do exactly. So you got a February 20th bill that you received around February 20th, USPS or email or portal, however you get it. It becomes late on March 5th, as long as March 5th is not on holiday or weekend. And then that's when you $5 or 1.5%.
So
Let's
it's a
say you owe
15-day,
$100 right now as a bill.
15-day payment window.
That's about correct.
Okay.
And then 30 days, 45 days later, the 12th of the following month. So the 12th of April, if the 12th is not on a weekend or holiday, that's when non-payment occurs. Now you're 45 days roughly out. And that's when non-payment occurs. Now, if you contrast that for the city, let's say City of Freedom, when they ran, so they do not have to have a 30-day window between late and cutoff.
Right.
They can cut you off within 30 days of that building. So that's why you'll see sometimes that they'll have a late fee and then a week later a non-payment. So they may only have one bill outstanding and you get turned off and you must pay that one bill outstanding before you get another bill. Swanson, because it's an authority, has a 30-day window between late fee and non-payment fee.
Right.
So we often have, almost always have two bills outstanding by the time this connection first. Does that clarify a little bit?
Yeah, thanks.
So by the cutoff date, you've already incurred 2 late fees.
That's correct.
A late fee on the first month, late fee on the second.
That would be correct.
Get what you needed, Scott?
Yes, I did. We'll move on. If the committee would like me to move on to 6B, System Development Fee Study Update. In summary, North Carolina law requires the local government unit to update the system development fee analysis at least every 5 years. So we initiated that analysis last fall with McGill Associates, our professional engineering firm. And McGill Associates finished the project and the draft report. Staff is reviewing that. Staff has an additional meeting coming up here in the next week or so just to talk about that draft report. And we will bring that report and the recommendation to the Finance Committee in March Finance Committee meeting. And you'll get to see the analysis that was done, the entire report, and the recommendation on setting the rates for the system development fees. You'll have a water rate and a sewer rate for a total combined rate for system development fee. Following that, there would be additional action and discussion at the board once a recommendation comes from the Finance Committee. And then there's a public hearing that's required in terms of if those rates would change before they can be enacted. Our goal would be to have these fees either acknowledged as staying the same or increased and be effective with the beginning of the fiscal year, July 1st. That would be our goal. If we can't meet that schedule, then of course we'll bring that to the board in July for review, consideration of approval, those system development fees. Any questions or comments on that item?
Have you had a chance to read all the responses from all the planning departments of the municipalities?
Yes.
I know you hadn't when we had our last meeting because it was the one from Creedmoor was a little lengthy.
Well, it was, and it was delivered, I think, the day before the cutoff and the evening of the cutoff. But yeah, no, I took a look at that for sure. Look at that. So thank you. All right. Moving on, item 6C, USDA $35 million loan, projections of debt service requirements and effect on rates. Richard?
On August 31st, 2022, the Finance Committee met, and one of the agenda items for discussion at that time was the projection of debt service related to the I-85 sanitary sewer system improvement project and its various funding options. During that meeting, Sequasa staff and the finance committee members discussed a USDA loan of approximately $35 million, assuming an interest rate of 2.5% for annual debt service of just under $1.4 million. The aforementioned values were the projected break-even point in a new debt service that would be offset by expiring debt without affecting rates. The 2.5% interest rate was a realistic interest rate at the time of the discussion and calculations in 2022. At the regular board meeting on February 13, 2024, USDA presented Sequasa with a loan proposal package for the $35 million, but at an interest rate of 3.75% on a 40-year term. The interest rate at closing could be lower than the effective interest rate if that rate is lower, but it could be lower than 3.75%. Based on the current rate of 3.75%, the annual debt service would be just above 1.7 million. The 1.25% increase in the interest rate from the 2.5 that we did for preliminary projections to the 3.75 the USDA has included in their package yields a difference in the annual debt service of approximately $309,000. This item is being brought back to the Finance Committee to update members on the debt service projection, recalculated at the stated interest rate, and its effect it may have on customer billing rates in the future. The debt only impacts sewer rates, as this loan is for a wastewater collection project that does not include water production or distribution. So in short, debt service related to this will only impact sewer rates, not water rates. There's several options for consideration. If you did not want it to affect customer rates, the increase in debt service, reduce the cost of the overall I-85 sanitary sewer system improvement project by reducing the amount of work that is performed in that project. An example would be to push further portions of the project out for years. Increase out-of-pocket costs from Sequasa for the project. A note that Sequasa is already required to spend out-of-pocket costs for the project. And I believe that was presented to the board last month at just under $7 million. Pay down some existing debt with fund balance. Increase sewer rates over the next few years to align with the projected deficit in the annual debt service due to the increased interest rate. And of course, in your package, you have kind of a projection of the next 7-year rates with that projected USDA debt and sunsetting debt included, so you could have some comparison. So it was even hard to see on that page because of its orientation, but we have provided the finance committee members with a handout as well. If you haven't viewed that, it's what's on screen. Sorry, you can take that page and flip it. And that's great. If not, we'll just speak to it with the copy in front of us. All right. So Richard, walk through an example for us starting in the left-hand side of the column in 2026 in terms of what we're seeing as far as the different colors and what they mean, please. Sure. So the blue bars are your loan debt service. The red bars are bond debt service. The purple is the town of Butner MOU payment. And the green is all of that combined. And the blue is what debt service will be projecting that the USDA's $35 million in debt. They've already told the board in February when they presented the package that the estimated annual debt service would be $1.7 million. So the blue bar represents the USDA kicking in. So if you look at 2026, our current, I don't know that the finance committee really cares how much of it's bond debt versus loan debt. But if you look at all that debt combined, it's at 3.7 million in the green bar. You see the blue bar is the same because USDA debt service wouldn't kick in until 2028. Same thing for 2027. You see that our total debt's 3.4 million, our total annual debt service. So that's dropped about 300,000. That's as we pay down some debts. You'll see that the actual interest expense is going down. In 2028, currently, we would project fiscal year 2028, 27, 28. That is when the town of Butner's payment sunsets. So we will no longer be paying town of Butner after the beginning of that year. You see that we're paying them $125,000. So we're paying them just for 2 or 3 months, I believe, in the sunsets. And you'll see that is the year that we're anticipating USDA debt would come online. So you do see that our debt service for that year, because we've only dropped 300,000 and now about 400,000 from the town of Butner, we've only dropped about 700,000 in our old debt. But our new debt's 1.7 million. So you see that debt service for that year would go from 3.4 million the prior year to just over 4 million that year. Well, of course, if we increase debt service by 600,000 in 1 year, that would have to be absorbed through either fund balance or rates. Going forward in 2029, you kind of see that the purple bar disappears. Town of Butner is now paid. There's no more payments to them. And you see existing debt continuing to decline. You see that the red bar on bond debt service declines significantly. So that means another bond debt has been paid off. And you see that as you would expect, the USDA built in plus sunsetting debt starts to decline slowly over future years by 100,000 a year, maybe. And that kind of shows you where the rates would be. But you see, it would be 2031 before you get back to about 3.7 in total debt service, which aligns kind of with 2028 or 2026, which is about 3.7. So in short, in summary, there's about a 5-year period in there, and 3 years of that, you're going to have increased debt service because USDA 35 million is coming on.
But we had more falling off than just Butner.
There are some others falling off. If you notice the red bar in 2026 is significantly higher than it is in 2028. So there's a couple others that sunset in that 27, 28 year. They will be paid off.
Anything further on the chart for us, Richard?
I think that's pretty much the chart.
Any questions by the Finance Committee on what Richard presented on the chart?
I don't have any questions. Looks like we're good.
The Finance Committee like to talk about any of the options for consideration at this time related to that project? Page 26. Nicole, you want to roll back to page 26, please?
But the I-85 project is projected to provide allocation to all the customers for a period of 20 years.
Correct.
So in 20 years, we will halfway be through this loan and we're going to have to do it again, like an upgrade, or could be.
Well, it depends on your growth. Your growth could be, you assume 20 years growth, you're at 100%, or it could be 30 or 40 years by the time you reach that capacity. That's your point in those lines. But if growth would continue, yes, you'll reach that tipping point at some point where you'll have capacity restrictions somewhere in the lines. At this point, I don't know where those would be. There could be growth in other areas of the Saguasa service area. I'm not sure, but yeah, that's a fact. There's only so much capacity in our system. There's only so much capacity at our treatment plants as well. The two kind of work together.
So my thought is that we've got a loan that's going to last us 40 years, and in 20 years, we're going to need to do another upgrade, and then we're going to need more money. Or maybe we will have more revenue to deal with that.
Yeah, no, I think that's very accurate. In fact, if you jump back to your thoughts about how to fund depreciation from 90 to 100%, you have to think about your 80-year-old system continuing to age. You're going to have to continue to finance those improvements. There's the PFAS program that's coming around. There's the plant is already 80 years old. There's going to be upgrades to the plant, the water towers, and so on and so forth. So yes, you're going to have those continuing costs for that. The I-85 project looks at the development throughout all of our communities, as you pointed out, for that. But you're right, there will be a tipping point at some point, whether it's 10 years, 15, 20, 35, 40, or 50 years. It's out there. It's going to occur again.
Well, I will deal with it in 50 years when it comes up.
Well, I think that,
and I'll do it.
I think that one of the things that is very real here is we're looking at this project in terms of the I-85 project. Two things. We saw a huge escalation in cost estimate for this project in the last 3 or 4 years, just to the compounding inflation that we saw, 7%, 7%, 7%. And we factored in a lot of that to this project cost, as well as contingencies already to that $70 million project cost. There's also construction administration as part of that cost. We talked about recently $6.8 million, I think, is what Seguasa is going to be contributing as far as out-of-pocket costs. We're looking at that project. We're going to go out for bid with that project later this year. I think both construction packages and the board, just as a reminder, we'll get an update from CDM Smith at the March board meeting, a deep dive into the entire project. But we are setting up the contract bid specs in ways that we can have alternate bids for certain portions of the project, meaning on bid day, if the bids come in above $70 million, we can look at those portions that were bid as bid alternates and pull them off the project. There are certain phases of the project that can be done in future years. It all depends on how that project comes in on those bid dates, basically, as far as the total cost of the project. So what does that mean? So if you have a fixed expense or projections of loans on this project, let's just say $70 million is it, then obviously we will prioritize what must be done in the project and projects that can be delayed in future years when maybe there's additional revenue derived from the building, the expansion. We can look at that as well. There's also the opportunity, and I'm just reading off of the options behind you on the screen, where it said push certain portions of the project into future years. That's something we'll definitely take a look at. There's an opportunity to increase out-of-pocket costs from Seguasa to the project, possibly to buy some of that down. So again, using an example, if our target is $70 million capped, and we come in at $75 million to do the entire project, and we don't want to take anything off the project, maybe there's an opportunity to add $5 million from Seguasa to fund that portion to get it done as well. Keeping in mind that these construction improvements are going to be happening over 24 to 36 month period. So this isn't one fiscal year, if you will. This is multiple fiscal years that this may be occurring. And if you think about adding some additional money from Seguasa, let's say, to the project, it could occur over a 3 fiscal year period, not a single fiscal year. The option to pay down some existing debt with fund balance is something that we can look at. I know Richard and I have looked at some tables recently regarding that. I don't think that we have anything today to provide to you as far as what that would equate to. Or there's the opportunity, the last bullet item, to look at that deficit that we have in our projected deficit between the 2 point, let me get this right. The projected deficit where we have the 1% increase in the interest rate from the 2.5%. We did these models a couple of years ago to the 3.75, which is a difference annually in debt service of approximately $309,000. We can look at some rate models on what it would take over the next 5 years, 4 years, 5 years. I forget what the period was we were looking at. Was it around that range? Three years?
I think it was between now and 2028.
3 years. Look at possibly what incremental sewer rates would be to get us to that point that when we're ready to bring on that debt in 2028, that our rates are already supporting that deficit of $390,000 at that point. So there's some options moving forward, and decisions aren't necessary today, but we are going to have to obviously review this again and again as we get ready for putting the work out or when the bids come in to have those discussions. So just want to put that in front of the committee as well. That's something that we've got to think about moving forward.
So the closing date was at the meeting the other night when all the documents were signed, right?
No.
So the closing date is not determined yet.
No.
Okay.
Closing date will be at the end of the project.
Right. So there is a chance that 3.75 could go down,
That's correct.
and we would have been guaranteed that we would get the lower of the rate. So was it one payment a year?
It's one payment a year with USDA payments. It's always due closing.
Okay. All right. It's kind of weird. That's a big check. You must hate writing that one out.
It's a draft. So we have a reminder.
You don't even have to look at
We
it.
haven't looked at
Yes,
cash flow.
it's a draft.
So it's there. That's correct.
Okay. Any other questions for Scott on this item?
Now, I'll probably bring this back to the finance committee at the next meeting as well.
Okay.
Have additional discussion on it because it is a critical issue because, in other words, as we look towards bid opening later this year on these projects, we definitely need to know what that number is as far as the affordability. Is it the 70 million? Is it going to be 65? Is it going to be 60 million? We want to know what that target is, especially as it's aligned with the increased rate for the bonds, if you will, because there's an opportunity, as we said, that you can reduce that overhead so that you don't have that rate increase, or if you're going to stay with that project and that $70 million, you're going to look at incremental increases, or you're going to wait till you get to 2028 and then do the rate increase at that point, move forward. So we'll have some additional question about that. And maybe you would like to see at the next finance committee meeting what rates would look like projected 4 years out from now if we were to make up that deficit. Would your finance committee have any interest in at least taking a look at that at this point? Or would you like to save that for another finance committee meeting just specifically focused on the I-85 project?
Another meeting. Yeah,
Look at the projected
on another
interest
meeting.
rates, yeah.
At the upcoming meeting in March?
Yeah.
Okay. Richard, do you want to make that note?
I mean, it won't affect us till 2028, but still, it's
We want you to see, financially that what that looks like as far as that incremental growth. So, Richard, we had, okay, we'll do that. You'll prepare that schedule for us. Okay, very good. All right, how are we doing on time?
We have
Okay, finance committee.
4 minutes.
Okay. So the next item is 6D, the capital improvement program proposed plan update. So in May of 2023, the board of directors approved the agency's first 10-year CIP effective July 1st of 2023. Once FY 23-24, correct. Once the budget year was closed out financially, adjustments were made to the available CIP fund balance. The resulting calculations to the 10-year CIP program. Due to this event, this closeout, the CIP was amended again in July of 2023. Basically, what I'm trying to say is we had to have a 10-year CIP approved last year with the budget in order to align with the requirements of the USDA loan package that we put together. Plus, we also want to have a 10-year CIP that's approved. We had to make an amendment in July then, based on the closeout of the fiscal year. So what I'm proposing is that I bring a recommended 10-year CIP to you at the March meeting. But we also look at maybe just having the board adopt the 10-year CIP in the beginning of the fiscal year in July versus ahead of time, because we'll actually have better numbers, if you will, as far as the fund balance that moves into CIP for the projects. Does the committee have any concerns with that approach?
So we are going to redo the CIP 1 year from its inception,
Right. So we have a 10-year schedule.
another year.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to add basically another year to that 10-year schedule and move some projects forward that we couldn't complete this year into next year. So we'll see a schedule change. And Richard provides me basically with the CIP fund balance that's available after closeout that goes into that model basically to help us with our projects and our forecasts. And that's what we're asking for, just to do that in the new fiscal year, July.
Makes sense. Agree with that?
Okay.
Yep, we're good.
The next item is the payroll transition update. Was combination of myself and Richard, and Priscilla, you're still here? Okay, very good. So this is the payroll transition project update. In September of 2023, the finance committee meeting, staff proposed changes to the employee payroll processing schedule. In summary, staff recommended moving the current payroll processing from a pre-month end to a post-month end schedule. Following discussion, the finance committee members concurred that Owasso would benefit greatly by implementing the new program, both from a time management perspective as well as from a financial perspective. To achieve the post-paid payroll transition in FY 23-24, staff proposed to make the transition during the month of February 2024. A key component to this payroll transition program included several options for employees to select from in terms of using benefit hours or a loan to offset the period, the 6 weeks between paychecks during the transition. The board has had an opportunity to discuss this item both at the 10/23/23 Board of Directors regular monthly meeting where a motion was passed to move forward with the postpaid payroll processing program with staff bringing the associated option response back to the board as soon as practical. The Saguasa attorney mentioned that he would like to review this program further to ensure it falls within all legal requirements for employee pay, et cetera. At the December 12th, 2023 Board of Directors regular monthly meeting, staff came back and provided updates to the board in terms of the post payroll transition program. The executive director also suggested moving the start of the program from February 2024 to September 2024. The direction from the board was for staff to find a way to fund the employee portion of the payroll transition program costs so employees would not need to use their benefit time to conform to a pay period paycheck schedule that should have been corrected years ago. In terms of the status, this is in progress. The financial calculations have been performed for all employees to receive pay during 6-week transition. The expense associated with this project will occur in fiscal year 24-25. Since this will be a one-time cost, staff suggests this expense be taken out of fund balance at the appropriate time. We're suggesting fall of 2024 in terms of a budget amendment. And this item still requires additional legal review, which is ongoing to ensure the payroll paycheck program is legally within the Fair Labor Standards Act. So that's where we are as far as an update on this program. I think the important part here is that we're continuing to move forward with this program as directed. We've got some legal considerations. We're just making sure that we check all the boxes for that. And in terms of paying for this program, it's not included in your operating budget for fiscal year 24-25. It actually was suggested as a one-time cost brought to the board for a budget amendment in the fall of 2024, which aligns with when we wanted to implement this program. So, Richard, is anything else that you'd like to add to that?
No, I think that's correct.
Okay. Finance Committee have any questions, comments for us on that update?
What's the amount of the money?
I knew that question was coming. So the amount of money that was provided to the board, I believe in December or shortly thereafter. And we looked at this as part of the budget process as well. So for ease of discussion, it's going to cost at current rates approximately $150,000. Ms. Kaczynski, I believe you asked in a previous board meeting, is that going to be the same? It will be in September. And the answer
Right,
from me
because we had to move it
So-
from one fiscal year to another.
I'm giving you the disclaimer that if the board approves the merit and the salary adjustment that's in the proposed budget, or you expand staff, depending on what your turnover ratio is, who's here at that time. So it's all fluid, but for discussion purposes, it's projected to cost about $150,000.
So the Tyler technology part is included in all of this?
No.
No, okay.
We're talking about operational costs,
Yeah.
not one-time Tyler Tech costs. If you'll recall, when we brought the Tyler Tech software to the board, I believe in December, we specified that it did not include the timekeeping module yet.
Okay.
We need to get this payroll transition in place first before we can implement automated timekeeping. So no, this does not include
Okay. All right.
external costs. It is strictly pay and benefits related. And to touch on Scott's point, the reason we pulled it back out of operating budget is it's not a recurrent ongoing. It's a one-time at the discretion of the board situation. So we thought it more appropriate not to let it affect rates, but just say we'll have to absorb it through fund balance at the time the board chooses to approve it if they approve it.
Another budget amendment.
Unfortunately, this one would be one, but this one will be board driven.
Okay, it's all right. I voted for it, so it's okay.
That's the budget.
So what we are doing in essence is funding the transition period
Right.
out of our fund balance. So we're not taking anything away from the employees.
That's my understanding that that's the proposal the board is considering.
Right. I want to make sure that we're still with
I
that.
don't think the board has taken any formal action on that, but I believe that is the board discussion at this time.
Any other questions for Scott on this item?
Thank you. We'll move on to item 6F, medical insurance cap update. I don't have anything as far as a formal document for this one, but Richard, would you just give us an update on medical insurance cap update? Would you like me to do that?
I can get costs, the budget.
Okay.
impact, but I believe you would want to get.
Sure.
No.
No. I'll follow up on this for sure. So just as a program that was approved by the board, basically to minimize the out-of-pocket costs for employees for the healthcare insurance only. There's multiple insurances that Sequasa offers to the employees, dental, medical, and vision insurance. And we looked at the tables of costs associated with loss of paying those employees and the different categories, basically employee only, employee plus child, employee spouse, employee family. You could see basically there was an escalation of costs, especially to the organization and to the employee for the out-of-pocket costs. This item was presented to the board, and the board gave us direction basically to cap employees' out-of-pocket costs at $500 per month in the program. So this is the new program for this fiscal year implemented. And we have out of our 47 current employees on board, we have very few employees that will actually be taking advantage of this program this fiscal year. And that's because they're aligned more or less with the different program options that are available. Most employees are covered by Sequasa as an employee for the insurance program. I think there's only two in the two. Priscilla, you're behind us. Do you want to come up and speak to that at all, or jump in at any point as far as those numbers, or was it pretty much just
Yeah, it's just the two employees.
the
that
two
are-
employees, the family plan?
One is family and one is employee spouse.
Okay. So just to let you know the financial impact regarding that. And then Richard, you have the numbers that you say related to that, correct?
Right, so included in the proposed budget that you have in the agenda today, the proposed cost for those two employees is approximately 34,000 included in the budget, and that is built into the medical insurance cost in the operating budget.
Not so bad.
No, and if the board recalls that we provided a lot of table data based on estimated participation in the program. And we anticipate that those numbers may change over the next 1 to 5 years. But that's the participation, that's the budget impact at this point. I think we considered it might have been 10 times this amount when we were providing the table data to you, thinking that possibly we had 10 different groups participating or employees participating in each one of the different sectors, but we don't have that at this point. Okay. So that's an add to our budget this year. If there's no further questions or comments, I'll move on to 6G, the leak adjustment discussion. And the leak adjustment discussion, I think that we added this most recently because we saw a request by Commissioner Kaczynski for our next board meeting to talk about the leak adjustment programs. And we thought it would be a good opportunity to at least bring it to the Finance Committee's attention today, just to have a preview of that discussion to see if there's anything that Finance Committee would like us to review or discuss. Richard can provide us with an overview of the leak adjustment form that we use, and we've got a copy of that on screen, and I think we also have a copy at your desktop for that as well. So if the Finance Committee would like to entertain some discussion on that, we'll be happy to start with just kind of walking you through a little bit about the leak adjustment program. Okay? Richard?
So just an overview of our leak adjustment program. Of course, it's been reviewed over the years by finance committees and boards. Looked at any possible changes. It's basically built from the water rules that the board approves. There's a section in there for when and how Sequasa will consider adjustments to sewer portions of bills based on what's deemed by the water rules as a leak event. So our internal kind of operating procedures and the form are built off of that. So just know that it's board driven. It's not internal driven necessarily. So just a basic summary you see on the form that, and then a little history on the leak adjustment policy. It was reviewed by the Finance Committee, 2016, 17. And the board revised the water rules, I believe, about that same time. So maybe 2016, it looks like. The finance committee discussed, because one of the proposals, one of the complaints by customers at that time is by the time you determine that there's a water leak by getting your bill, the leak's already crossed into a new bill cycle. And so the board said, okay, that makes sense. So if you've got one event that affects two bills, we'll adjust two bills. And so the finance committee directed us to modify the leak adjustment policy accordingly. So that was the last real modification, if you will, kind of our policy and procedures. So we basically look at a customer if they have a leak. And in the early days, that was designed to be catastrophic leaks where you have a burst water pipe or a burst water heater and you have some substantial loss. It has expanded over the years into much more than that. We basically allow one leak event for two consecutive bills if it affects two bills in a 12-month billing period. The customer requests a leak adjustment 9 days, within 90 days of the bill date. Of course, that bill will go into late fee and non-payment. So we recommend that as soon as they get the bill, if they know they've got a leak, they go ahead and follow the procedures for a leak adjustment, not wait 90 days, because by then you are in non-payment status. If the customer has been notified by SEGWASA personnel, as our billing team is doing the billing each month, they look for red flags that there's unusually high usage, and they'll send out high usage letters to the customers well before the customer gets the bill that says your usage is abnormally high. You've just given you a heads up that you may have a leak as a courtesy. And then that gives the customer 15 days, sometimes well before the bill arrives, to start looking for that leak, fixing that leak. So that's kind of the grace period. Just as a reminder, leak adjustments are not allowed for water hoses or faucets. We have that complaint quite common. I'm sure as board members, you've heard that complaint. Irrigation systems, leaking or running toilets or faucets, because that is deemed to be going back into our sewer system and the water is being retreated as basically as wastewater. Leaks resulting in billed usage during a leak event of 5,000 gallons or less. That was changed to the policy maybe 2 or 3 years ago as we went to fee for service rate schedules. There was some discussion in the finance committee meetings at that time about that. The reason and the logic behind that is because you may not have the staffing and resources in the office to do a bill adjustment for 500 gallons, which results in, let's say, $2 or $3 credit to the customer. And now you've spent 2 hours of staff time. I don't know that we have the resources, staffing wise, to handle that. It's the customer's responsibility to provide documentation to process an adjustment. So basically, to summarize, the customer goes online, this form's online, they can pick up one in the office if they prefer. They fill out they say, okay, I had a leak. Here's my plumber's invoice. They fill out a leak adjustment request. They tell us it affected my February bill, so please adjust that. It could be 2 bills if it's a major leak and it costs $2 billion. And then we look at their 12-month average previous to the leak, and we adjust their sewer bill down to that amount. Remember, we never adjust water, only sewer. And that's basically the way it works. Occasionally we'll have customers that say, well, I fixed it myself, which is quite common, and we'll require a receipt for some sort of plumbing repair that they can provide. That's kind of a synopsis of leak adjustment procedures and policy.
And the reason I asked for this is because there has been phone calls, there has been social media posts, there has been a lot of discussion out on the web about SEGWASA's leak policy. So I want to bring it forward one more time to the public. And this form is very easy to understand. I've never seen it before, but it is extremely easy to understand and it's self-explanatory. So that's the point I wanted to make so that customers know that it's out there. You can understand it. I can understand it. It makes perfectly good sense to me. And that's the policy that we have. The police report portion of hoses or faucets is if a person has been vandalized and there's a police report that shows evidence that somebody came out and did that. Is that what we're talking about there?
We run into that situation about 3 or 4 years ago during the summer twice. And in one case, it was a neighborhood children
Yeah,
situation where they kept coming to the person's property.
but the water doesn't go through the sewer at that point. So
And so we said, okay, I think we discussed, I believe Scott was on board at that time, and we discussed and said, well, we can't adjust for water hoses because then every customer could just say, well, I left a water hose on. And I said, well, if there's some documentation like a plumber's receipt or truly, and that would be a police report. If that person feels strongly enough that they can file a police report, then Saguasa maybe could consider that as
All right.
documentation.
Okay,
And so that's where that came from. It's an odd thing. We have it very rarely, but we had it.
well, but we're going the extra mile to find a way to do it. So that's what's important.
That was our take on it is, you know, surely that maybe is an additional consideration, like a plumber's receipt. That if it's a police incident, then.
I don't remember the time frame because years kind of run together, but I remember an instant several years ago, probably a good many years ago now, where somebody was having some contract work done at the house. The contractor turned the hose on, used it,
Oh,
laid it down. And went off. Yeah. And the customer got a big bill.
That's right.
So what did they do? How did they deal to get out of that?
I think in this case, they tried to go back on the contract.
Okay.
The customer tried to go back on the contract,
Okay.
I believe. I don't remember. It's been a long time.
Okay. Well, thank you for that.
More than 3 days.
Oh.
That's a memory that comes with age. You know, you remember stuff 10 years ago, but you don't remember what happened 3 days ago.
Yeah.
All right, so we are moving on to item 7, comments, recommendations from committee members. I will just say before I turn it back to the Finance Committee for your recommendations and comments that we did capture throughout this entire meeting, the discussion and the items that you are requesting for the next Finance Committee meeting. That meeting is coming up on March 21st from 1 to 4 p.m. at Buckingham Town Hall. You can see the note on the screen as well. I believe that meeting is in this room
Okay.
again. So we'll have the same setup for that meeting. And Crystal's nodding yes. That's good. Awesome.
Okay.
So again, we've captured the information in today's discussion. We'll prepare the information we need for the March Finance Committee meeting. At this point, I'll turn it back to the committee as far as any comments or recommendations from committee members. Chair?
So any comments? Yeah. I mean, we appreciate all the effort from you and your staff to prepare the items for us to review today. Very thorough. Any comments?
Do we have can you give us a budget without the rate increases? Can you, somebody asked for that already?
Expand on that a little bit, so I'm sure I'm interested.
We've got the numbers with the rate increase. And if we don't do a rate increase, can I know what that'll be, how bad the deficit might be?
I can tell you that now, or I can tell you in the ordinance to show it, but it results in nearly 1 million on the ordinance as fund balance.
Okay,
Because if you look at the legislative memo for the proposed budget, it talks about the increase in water revenue and sewer revenue,
Yeah.
which equates to almost 1 million.
Mhm.
So if you say, okay, let's keep rates as they are, then you're going to have the same revenue you do currently. So if you plug those back in, they're going to be a shortfall of almost 1 million. I think it's 960 some thousand. That operating expenses went up and you didn't raise rates to cover those, so you have to use million and fund balance. So your ordinance would have it in red about one.
Okay.
Close to that. Would you like me to bring you an ordinance that shows that on the next meeting, or is that sufficient?
well, that's sufficient enough to know that. Almost $1 million
Mhm.
fund balance.
Any additional questions for Scott? No additional questions. Again, thank you all for your presentations. It's greatly appreciated. With that, we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a motion and I'll be second. All those in favor say aye.
Hi.
All opposed have the same right. Motion carried. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.